What is happening, everybody? It is time for NFL Live Before Lock. We're talking about Sunday Night Football, and it should be a really good game. I am not EMAC. I don't know if anybody could tell based on the fact that I am a fraction of EMAC's age, but I'm filling in for EMAC. He had a concert to go to. It's actually kind of like elder abuse, Matt. I don't know if he told you about the concert, but I guess it's down in Florida. They sell tickets to go see Elvis. And they all think it's actually Elvis. And EMAC's all excited. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to see Elvis tonight." And he hasn't heard the news yet. So I kind of feel bad because, Elvis, he passed away, which it was a while ago for us, but in the span of EMAC's life, it was fairly recently. So I didn't want to tell him the news. But apparently what happens is these older people go see an Elvis impersonator and nobody tells them that it's a fake Elvis, and they all think it's the real one. So he's going with a group of his friends to go see Elvis tonight. He asked me if I could fill in, and I was like, of course, I'll fill in for my friend. So in his place, I'm here with you. And also, Jordan Klein's power went out, so there was nobody to produce either. So I am hosting. I'm also producing. And the only thing that I'm going to ask of you guys as you're watching is do me a big favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because for the next 50 minutes, Matt Belman and I are going to be breaking down this Sunday night football game. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm good. Frustrating afternoon in some regards. They most always are, unless you're on the top of GPPs. But high-scoring slate, as we talked about before. I know you kind of got screwed over by Rashee Rice not playing or getting hurt early, I should say. And then Anthony Richardson getting hurt didn't help me. Just a high-scoring slate with a lot of good plays. But tonight's game might be the best game of the day.
Yeah, it was what I thought was going to be a really good slate for me. I didn't get killed or anything like that. FanDuel is still to be settled because there's a Sunday night football game. But on DraftKings, I finished 25 points out of first in the $5 on DraftKings with a 0 from Rashee Rice, who blew out his knee because he got tackled by Patrick Mahomes on an interception, or kind of like got hit awkwardly. So I thought it was going to be a really good day for me, but just kind of ended up being a whatever day. So a little bit annoying on that front, but whatever. We got Sunday Night Football, so it's going to be time for us to make some money here. And shout out to Chris Williams. He has already gifted out 10 YouTube memberships. So Chris, as always, thank you very much for supporting the channel. We always appreciate you. And I guess that means, Chris, is the memberships are back. When did those turn back on, Chris? Because I know that's something that we've been talking about in the chat here, about how, for whatever reason, YouTube was just not allowing those memberships, but seems they have been turned back on. And I didn't notice that earlier. So Chris, good stuff there. Thank you very much for that. And if you guys, just today. All right. And if you guys have any questions for me and you are a Stochastic sub, hit me up in the YouTube channel. I'm going to be keeping an eye, in our Discord channel. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the Discord. If anybody asks me, I will be there to read those questions and then read them off on the show. And Matt and I could discuss whatever it is that you guys have questions about. So I've run Sims here, Matt, for both DraftKings and FanDuel. And what we're going to do here is we'll talk about some of our favorite options for the slate. We'll look at what the Sims have to say as well. And we'll have a nice discussion about the game today. The first thing I want to ask you, though, is in regards to the quarterbacks today. Are you going to be prioritizing Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, or just playing both in as many lineups as you can? Because that is probably what the field is going to be doing.
I think both is probably the correct answer, but if forced to choose, it's Lamar Jackson for me. He looks significantly better in the tools as far as ownership and leverage goes. I ran some Sims, and he's popping a lot more than Josh Allen is at their respective ownership. It's almost like 6 and 1, half dozen the other with these two. On any given day, they can throw up a score that is needed on a main slate. So on a showdown slate, certainly you might need both of them. But if forced to choose, I'm going to say Lamar. How about you?
Yeah, it's going to be Lamar for myself as well, especially in the captain spot. As you guys can see here on screen, ran the Sims, used our default settings. And right here, if you're looking at the DraftKings lineups here to start, and then we'll go ahead and we'll look at FanDuel in a second as well. Josh Allen is my second most rostered captain, but number one is Lamar Jackson, and a pretty big gap in between them. Lamar Jackson showing up in 47% of my top lineups, whereas Josh Allen showing up in 19%. This isn't the biggest deal in the world, but one thing that does also help Lamar Jackson is, I agree with you. I think we really do want to prioritize getting both of the quarterbacks into our lineups. If you guys are somebody who does like to play cash games for single game slates, I really do think you must have Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson in those lineups. And it does at least help a little bit that they're both so expensive. And Lamar Jackson being $300 less expensive in the multiplier spot on DraftKings that also helps him out a little bit because we're going to need every single $100 of salary savings. We want to pay up for these two really, really expensive guys. And then on the other side, Matt, I had asked you is are you prioritizing playing both of them together? It looks like the answer is yes. And that is the answer for me as well. But if you are not playing a lineup that has both quarterbacks and say maybe you just have Lamar Jackson, you just have Josh Allen, what is the game theory of that lineup to make it work without one of the other quarterbacks? Like, what would you be doing to create upside in that lineup that maybe doesn't have Josh Allen? Who else would you be targeting from the Bills in that kind of lineup?
I think that in that type of lineup, honestly, you can go a couple of different routes. Obviously, the natural way to say it's like James Cook, the running game gets there. Maybe they are able to move the ball and the receivers are okay, but they have to kick a bunch of field goals. In that case, maybe Tyler Bass looks good in the tools. And then the other way would be like a full Baltimore onslaught and just say that Baltimore rolls here, which I think is within the realm. I don't think that it's likely, but I also don't think people are going to play this slate like that. And if Baltimore just rolls here and Buffalo doesn't look good, there's certainly times where Allen doesn't get there at his price tag. So I think those are the main three ways, personally.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the quarterbacks on FanDuel here in a second, but just because I see it coming up in YouTube, and then I open up Discord and I see people discussing the weather there as well. Does that matter to you all that much, the weather for today? Because people are asking, like, is weather a concern? And I mean, it's a one-game slate, so it's not like we could take these players out of our player pool, but is there any considerations to be made for throwing the football or kicking or anything like that with some rain in the forecast?
I kind of overlooked that game, but it doesn't even seem like there's much to be worried about. On the weather report I'm looking at, it says scattered light showers. Yeah. So, I mean, no, like, definitely not. Even if there was, like, it would have to be pretty severe for me to, like, on a showdown slate, really change who I wanted to get to. Like, remember that, like, it was actually a Buffalo game. That Buffalo game, like, a couple years ago in, like, the crazy snow where they only ran the ball. Like, if weather's like that, then sure. But, like, some rain, nah.
Wasn't that the game, if I remember correctly, it was a game against the Patriots, and the Patriots, it was when Mac Jones was the quarterback, and they literally attempted 3 passes the entire game. Yes. Is that correct?
I was trying to remember who they played, and then as soon as you said that, absolutely, 1,000%.
All right, let me try to find this. Mac Jones, 3 pass attempts, bad weather. I'll put that into Google. I assume that's probably enough for it to come up. It was, let's see, Patriots, 3 pass attempt game. Yeah, Patriots win over Bills. This game was, 3 years ago. Mac Jones went the winning quarterback in that game was Mac Jones. He went 2 of 3 passing for 19 yards. It was a game from 3 years ago on Monday Night Football between the Bills and the Patriots. So, yeah, it's nothing like that. And some rain in the forecast. It's not something that I think we have to downgrade the kickers or downgrade the passing game for. And even that, it's like, what do we do? Like, we're not avoiding Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. The kickers, I think, are still fine. This isn't like, I don't mind rain all that much. It's more wind that becomes problematic for the kickers. Like, if you watch that terrible Jets-Broncos game, that was rainy and it was windy, where kickers were trying to kick and, like, the ball was going all kinds of sideways. Like, Greg Zuerlein, when he went to attempt the game-winning kick, it wasn't a short kick, but it wasn't like an insurmountable difference or anything. Do you see that kick that I'm referencing?
Yeah, I did. And, like, yeah, I mean, maybe if it were like that, it would change my perspective, but it doesn't even seem like it's going to be like that.
Yeah, and that was a kick. It looked like it was going down the middle, and then all of a sudden the wind takes hold of it and it whips it to the right. It's nothing like that. So I'm good to play the quarterbacks, the passing game, and then the kickers also totally fine for tonight's game as well. So let's go back and look at the quarterbacks now, but we'll look at it from a FanDuel perspective. I will say historically, I do not like Lamar Jackson games on FanDuel for single game slates, Matt, because what ends up happening is Lamar Jackson is just your optimal, most likely guy to be in the MVP spot on FanDuel by such a wide margin that he ends up being incredibly duped. But he's so likely to be in the winning lineup as the MVP that you kind of get stuck in this situation where it's like, all right, do I just play Lamar Jackson and split lineups with a bunch of the field, or Josh Allen as well in this case, because he's going to be fairly popular as well. Or you just play somebody who's like wildly not likely to be optimal, knowing that should Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson be the highest scorer, that your lineups are just like completely sitting dead. So if you look at the lineups that I have built here for FanDuel in the MVP spot, you've got our ownership projections. Right around 40% of the field is expected to play Lamar Jackson in the MVP spot. 30% of the field expected to play Josh Allen. And in my lineups, I got to 60% Lamar Jackson in the MVP, 30% Josh Allen. And it's just, I don't love these lineups because you get into this spot, like I said, where these are overwhelmingly the most likely guys to be in the winning lineup as the MVP, but it's so hard to build unique lineups with either of them in that multiplier spot. So that's why for this particular slate, I really do prefer DraftKings. That's kind of always been the case for me on these Lamar Jackson slates. But what do you make of the MVP spot over on FanDuel? Is it Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen for tournaments, or would you just try to roll the dice and take a chance on somebody else?
So the only difference on tonight's slate than normal slates, which you laid out pretty well, is just like there's both Lamar and Josh Allen here. So ownership can't be so overwhelming on one of them like they normally would be. So it makes each of them look a little bit better and the fade of both of them harder, because it's probable one of them gets there, but that won't always happen. So the amount of people that won't roster one of Allen or Lamar in the captain is going to be few and far between. So I do think that there's a contrarian aspect to doing it. I don't necessarily have the right answer. It's slate dependent. For me here, I'm more, I think, likely to use one of those guys and try to get weird with one of my flex spots. But I see the case for both sides. A classic DFS, question mark, and that's what we have here.
Yeah, and we'll talk about maybe some other players we might want to get to if we want to try to differentiate an MVP spot there over on FanDuel. But first, we do have a super chat from Mike H. And Mike is saying, not much for value tonight, making it hard to make unique lineups. Am I wrong? I don't see much lower than MVS or Kohler, but not really a fan of either. Did I miss something? All right, so here's the question from Mike, kind of summarized, Matt. Is there a cheap option, and I assume this is going to be a DraftKings-related question, is there a cheap option that you are really liking to save salary with to make it easier for you to get both quarterbacks into your lineups?
No. I mean, I think the guys you mentioned are in play, like Kolar, 800. He caught a ball last week, but they're really playing it just to get those other guys in there. There's no one down there that I think, oh, he looks good. How about you?
All right. So let's see what price point are we going to say here? Like 2,000 or cheaper?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. So, I mean, if we're looking 2,000 or cheaper, he put MVS or Kohler. Yeah, I think the guy's Matt Collins. So Matt Collins is only 2K, and he is showing up in 25% of my lineups here. He is only projected for single-digit ownership. So if you want to be different from the field and save salary, I think Matt Collins is your guy. Now, keep in mind that he's not going to have the same opportunities he had last game in the early going, because Keon Coleman had that weird situation where he was serving a team suspension, didn't play in the first quarter. But with that said, we've seen Matt Collins actually get on the field and get targets for the Bills. And honestly, a low ownership and a cheap price point, that's enough to make anybody viable for a single game slate. So if you are looking to get different, and I mean, he had mentioned MVS or Kohler, and I know those are guys who are cheaper and even more contrarian than Matt Collins, but Collins is still fairly low owned. He's the guy that stands out the most to me, Matt.
Yeah, if they were all the same price, like I'd play Hollins over Kohler, but the 1,200 on slates like this matters. So, like, if you don't need it, I think Hollins is the best play amongst them. But if you're going literally cheaper than 2,000, not talking about 2,000, who would you say?
All right, if it's cheaper than 2,000, I'm just scrolling through. I mean, I got a couple lineups with Dawson Knox, but that's not really anything all that significant. MVS there as well. Yeah, I guess I'll go with Dawson Knox. There is also the potential, like if you want to play like in an injury angle, if somebody like if Dalton Kincaid was to get hurt or another wide receivers to go down, Dawson Knox would be the guy who'd be the next man up. He is also somebody who we've seen start at tight end and be a meaningful part of the Bills offense in the past, prior to last year when Dalton Kincaid got into the mix. But yeah, Dawson Knox at 1,600. He did show up in 7% of my lineups. Also another guy who's not all that popular. So I would go Dawson Knox. There isn't any of these like 200 punts or anything like that I have any real meaningful interest in, though.
Yeah, same. It's just like, if you need it, is it better off going one of the QBs? Like, let's say you're dead set on captaining one of the QBs, and then you fill out the rest of your roster. Is it worth going the other QB and the 200 guy or the 800 guy in Kolar, or two mid-tier guys? I see the case for both. I really do. How about you?
So what's the from the top? What's like the 2v2 scenario?
So it's not an exact 2v2, but it's like, okay, so let's say you're dead set on captaining one of the quarterbacks. So you want to get the other quarterback in that lineup. You fill out the other parts of your lineup, and it's a 2v2 of Allen or the other quarterback you don't captain, and Kolar, or two mid-tier guys, whoever those might be. I haven't done the exact salary,
All right. So my answer is going to be neither, because if you just see like all the lineups I've built out here that I have my top 150 lineups that are favored in the Sims, like there was just never a need. And I have a lot of exposure to both the quarterbacks. So I have a total of Josh Allen and 59% in the flex. All right. So I've got 70% of Josh Allen, and I've got almost 90% of Lamar Jackson, and still didn't find a need to get to any of those guys. So you could build lineups with both quarterbacks. You don't have to go quite that cheap.
Fair. You're just skipping over a lot of the mid-tier, which makes sense. You're using the guys like, Ravens D, who I like, the kickers maybe, the Mac Allenses of the world, which is totally cool.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of people in chat who are asking us about Mark Andrews. So we'll talk about some of our favorite pass-catching options next. And Mark Andrews, because I'm sure this is something that's standing out to people on screen here, I've got a decent amount of exposure to him. It's nothing overwhelming, but he is in a third of my lineups over on DraftKings. And also, he's somebody now who, Mark Andrews at $5,800 on a Showdown slate just a year ago, Matt. He's going to be 60 or 70% owned or something like that. Now, yes, times have changed. Isaiah Likely's in the picture. On top of that as well, he hasn't played all that well this season. He had the injury last year, which that could be something that's been an issue for him. But with that said, there are not very many great-looking pass catchers on the Ravens side of the game. And you also have to consider that when people are looking at Isaiah Likely versus Mark Andrews, if you're taking the last 2 weeks into play, Mark Andrews actually has more receptions and more receiving yards than Isaiah Likely. They've just both been terrible. Something else to note as well, the Lamar Jackson, the Ravens only attempted 15 passes last week. So I get that we're seeing people like, oh my God, last week there was only 4 routes run by Mark Andrews. And then also the idea that of those 4 routes, what was his final stat line? He was targeted once and didn't catch any of those passes. But it's not like there was any real significant pass catching opportunities last week. I mean, Zay Flowers had 3 catches for 20 yards. Isaiah Likely had 1 catch for 4 yards. When you're in a game where you only attempt 15 passes and Lamar Jackson goes 12 of 15 for 182 yards, you can't reasonably expect any of the wide receivers to be any kind of real decent. So I understand all the concerns about Mark Andrews, but I think he's kind of been priced down for what his production has been and the scenario. I think he's a pretty good mid-range target, Matt. And relative to his price and ownership, he is my favorite player to combine with Lamar Jackson. And then keep in mind, too, Lamar Jackson is my favorite MVP as well as my favorite captain option. He has so much rushing upside. You don't necessarily have to have him with one of his pass catchers. But if I am picking one of his pass catchers, I like Mark Andrews for tonight, Matt.
I do too. I think your point is totally valid. He's been priced down for this. There's a chance, and it's a non-zero chance, that he hasn't been priced down enough. But there's also a probably greater chance in my mind he's been priced down too low. So I'm a little bit scared off, but so is the field. I mean, it's certainly risky on like a main slate. Probably wouldn't want to go there just because of what he's done so far this season. But even there, like, just considering how bad tight end has been up to this week, like, I wouldn't think he's a bad play. So certainly on a showdown slate where he's not getting a lot of love. And to me, he's still clearly Lamar's second best, weapon outside of Zay Flowers. So, or target, I should say. Second most reliable target. So I'm buying Andrews at the low right here as well. I'm with you.
We got a question here from Richie Smalls. And Richie, I see your question about defenses. Going to answer in a second. But first, I want to ask Matt. So with all that being said, I said Mark Andrews is my favorite pass catcher from the Ravens. Not that I think that he has a higher ceiling or that I want to play him over Zay Flowers if it was just like who is the best overall. Yeah, Zay Flowers was talking about the best overall pass catcher from the team. But here's the issue. Price matters, especially when you and I want to be playing a lot of Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. It's a little hard to get up to Zay Flowers at $8,600 relative to the $5,800 price tag of Mark Andrews. So it's the salary savings. Also, Mark Andrews has about half the projected ownership of Zay Flowers. So that is going to be something that has me leaning towards Mark Andrews. But overall, of all the pass catchers on the Ravens, is Mark Andrews your favorite to get exposure to? And, considering ownership and price and all of that, or is it somebody else?
I think it's Andrews. Certainly, again, the first part of your answer is well said. Like, yeah, if salary wasn't a thing, Zay Flowers would be the guy, but it is a thing. So, unless you're willing to not roster one of the quarterbacks, it's hard to roster both those guys and guys like Zay Flowers with any semblance of a roster outside them. So it depends on what your priorities are, but I am more with you than against you there.
We've got a question in the Discord channel. And don't forget, if you guys are our Stochastic sub, couple of things. First off, it comes with all of our packages. Any package you sign up for comes with access to our Discord channel. So jump in. And then in addition to that, ask us questions when you're in here, whether you're watching on shows, you've got questions outside of shows. Had some people asking questions in the Discord earlier about today's slate was going back and forth with them. So hop in the Discord. No reason to not be in our Discord channel. And if you want to sign up for any of those packages, link is down below in the YouTube description box. But Richie Smalls, 2320, he wants to know, would I play one or both defenses with both quarterbacks on DK? I don't love the idea of playing both defenses today, Matt, but I don't have an issue getting some exposure to the defenses. I mean, if you look right here, I do have the Ravens defense in about 30% of lineups, Bills defense in 20% of lineups. The reasons the defenses are showing up, though, it's really just because we're so starved for value on the slate and we need value because we're paying up for the quarterbacks. But what's your take on defense? Because there actually is a kind of defense take I have that I'll give in a second, but I want to hear from you. Do you like the Ravens defense? Do you like the Bills defense? Or do you like neither defense?
I definitely like the Ravens defense more. They're a little bit cheaper at home. I like the Ravens in this game. A little bit worried that that's kind of a popular take, but I don't think either defense gets a lot of love. Ravens will be higher owned than the Bills. So, the contrarian side of me is are the Bills, getting slept on here? But, again, I like Baltimore in this spot at home. I don't think I would play both defenses on this slate either just because there's so much opportunity cost. But I've seen weirder stuff happen.
So, I like the Ravens defense more. The reason I like the Ravens defense more is because, and first, I hate defenses. They're random as shit. But with that being said, the opportunity for defenses to score touchdowns come from the opposing quarterbacks throwing the football. It's very hard to have any kind of real upside as a defense if the opposing team is running a whole bunch. So you look at what happened, and this goes back to the Mark Andrews talking point that we had before. A week ago, what was the run versus pass split for the, and by the way, it looks like Rashee Rice likely tore his ACL, which was kind of expected based on what Andy Reid had said before. But last week, Lamar Jackson had 15 pass attempts. As a team, the Ravens ran the football 45 times. It is very difficult to score fantasy points as a defense when the other team is running the football because there's no sack opportunities unless the player is going to fumble, which isn't all that likely. Then there aren't opportunities for the defense to really score at all. I'm pretty confident the Bills are going to be throwing the football more than the Ravens today, which means more scoring opportunities for the Baltimore defense. They're also cheaper. I do hear you that the Bills are a little bit less popular, but it's not like it's a big gap. It's not like one of them is popular and the other one's contrary. And you've got 4 or 5% ownership difference between the two defenses. So I'd rather go to the Ravens. They're cheaper. ownership slightly more on the Ravens side, but nothing crazy. And I just think they're going to have more opportunities to score fantasy points. So if you really need salary savings in like that 3,800, 4,000 range, and yeah, the Ravens are the spot that I would go to. The other part of it too, Matt, is if you had $4,000 in salary on the table, if you weren't going to the Ravens defense, you weren't going to the Bills defense, there isn't other players around there I really like all that much, unless there's something you're seeing that I'm not.
I'm not, but I do think that's going to like raise the ownership of at least the Ravens defense. And I'm with you. Like, that's how I think the game plays out too. But Buffalo has been really good. Like, all of a sudden, if they get up to a 2-score lead here, Baltimore is going to be throwing. And Buffalo's going to be in that, opportunistic, is going to be in that spot instead of the Ravens. So I do think there's merit to both. And I'm totally with you as well. Like, once you get that cheap, there is really no one else.
Let's see what we have in the YouTube channel here. Malcolm Revamp wants to know, should I leave money on the table? Usually that is something I think is a pretty prudent strategy for Showdown, but I'm going to show you right now my top projected lineups by Simar. By the way, these stupid bots are going to drive me crazy in the YouTube chat. Bots, chill the fuck out. I'm doing a lot here. I'm trying to host the show. I'm trying to produce. I don't need to be throwing bots out of the YouTube chat as well. I don't need another thing on my plate right here. Anyway, look at my top projected lineups, Malcolm Revamp, and we'll do it for FanDuel here in a second as well. The reason it's so much harder to leave salary on the table for this particular slate compared to other ones is because I think it's so imperative to play Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, and they're both so expensive that it makes it hard to build lineups that don't use all or almost all of the salary. The only lineups that I have here that are leaving a lot of salary on the table amongst my top like 30 lineups, I have lineups that leave like $1,000 on the table, but those lineups either don't have Josh Allen or have Lamar Jackson in it. So like Malcolm, if you're playing just like a lineup or two, which I'm pretty sure you are, I think you want to be using almost all of the salary and playing Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Would you agree with that, Matt?
I would agree, but the only thing I'd say is like, let's say you have, I don't know how much salary you're talking, so it's all relative. Like,
yeah,
let's say you're playing Shakir at 7,600, but you want to play Kincaid instead. Like, I think that's totally fine. But I wouldn't be leaving like thousands on the table, like in a lot of Showdown slates you would want to do, except if you're playing like, the big $20 or $15 or whatever, and just want to get weird with it. But on an optimal basis, like, no, I'm with you, except if it's like a few $100s here or there.
Yeah, a few $100s, no issue on DraftKings. FanDuel is different. FanDuel, I think you almost have to leave a good amount of salary on the table because here's your options to be different on FanDuel. Either don't play Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen in the MVP spot. I don't want to be doing that. Or you have to leave salary on the table because else you're going to be playing a crazy duped lineup. So you look at my top projected lineups here on FanDuel, there is one that's using all of the salary at the top here, but for the most part, the lineups that I've made that are projecting the best are leaving $1,500 or $2,000 in salary on the table because that's kind of needed to be different on FanDuel. If you use all of the salary on FanDuel and then you also have Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen in that multiplier spot, like here, I just sorted by the most heavily duped lineups. Almost all of them use all the salary or only leave 500 in salary on the table. So I really think for FanDuel purposes, unless you're going to be playing like Derrick Henry in the MVP spot, would you agree you kind of have to leave at least 1,000 on the table if you're playing a single entry FanDuel lineup?
Yeah, definitely. Just because they don't have the multiplier. Yeah, it's just a different salary structure. So I'm with you. Totally different.
And then let's talk about for FanDuel in the MVP spot. If you were building a lineup and you go, you know what, screw it. Not going to play Josh Allen, not going to play Lamar Jackson. Would you go to Derrick Henry? Would you go to James Cook? Is there a different direction you'd be looking? Who is the pivot if you wanted to be just crazy and not play either of them in the MVP?
Yeah, I think Henry or Cook are the logical options. Zay Flowers can certainly get there. Half point PPR is probably better for him. He's in the, 3 catch, potentially take them all to the house type of mold. So I think Flowers would be the guy on FanDuel I'd be looking at to potentially get like way off the board, just an ownership play. If not one of the 2 running backs. I don't see many people outside that though.
Yeah, The problem I have with Derrick Henry is, I mean, if you just look at our projections, there actually is about 10% ownership going to Henry. So I get a little bit concerned if you do go Henry with people trying to be clever playing him. And just a lot of people are going to be like, oh, cool, I play Henry and I just use all the salary. And then you still end up that the most annoying thing that could possibly happen is you play Henry and have a heavily duped lineup on FanDuel. Like at that point, then it just ruins your entire night for what it is you're trying to do. So I'm going to side with you and say Zay Flowers just because he is projected about half the ownership of Henry. And that's also a scenario where, think, if Zay Flowers has the big game, you could still pair him with Lamar Jackson in that lineup, and you get the opportunity for Lamar Jackson to score the touchdowns throwing instead of running. So I'll agree with you on Zay Flowers at 12,000 in the MVP spot there on FanDuel. Once again, my preference is Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, but if you're insisting on playing a lineup that doesn't have either of them in the MVP spot, I'm going to say Zay Flowers on FanDuel.
Yeah, that would be the absolute worst with Henry if you use him and you're somehow duped a ton. So, yeah, totally with you.
Let's see what else. We have a couple of questions here in the super chats. One is coming from Nathan Perkins. Nathan wants to know, is Josh Allen and the Bills kicker as the only Bills okay? Yeah, absolutely. There's no problem with that at all. I don't see any issue with a 4-2 Ravens lineup. Let me go back and look at the top DraftKings lineups I have here. And top lineup 3-3, 4-2 Bills, 4-2 Ravens, 5-1 Bills, 5-1 Ravens. Like it's a mix of all different kinds of lineup constructions. I think there's a number of ways this game could play out. I would assume the majority of my lineups probably are 3-3s overall, but I don't see any issue with a 4-2 Bills stack, Matt. And I don't have an issue with a 4-2 Bills stack being Josh Allen and Tyler Bass, which is the question that Nathan Perkins is asking us. Because, yeah, there's a very real possibility that this game is played out where the Bills' points either come from Josh Allen rushing touchdowns, which happens all the time, or field goals. So, yeah, there's a scenario here where the Bills scored 20 points, 2 rushing touchdowns for Josh Allen, 2 field goals for Tyler Bass. I don't have any issue with that. Do you?
No issue at all. It's not like my favorite lineup, but certainly not hard to see the case where that plays out, you know, and that's kind of what you got to do on these showdown slates is tell yourself a story of how this game is going to play out. Yeah, the guy, you know, we've kind of beaten around it a little bit a few minutes ago, but man, I think I like Andrews at captain. I'm just going to say it. Like, He's so cheap. I'm just thinking about what you said before. Like, I know his role is a little bit different now, but the full PPR and DK, like this is the absolute nut low of his price in like years, and he's not getting owned. So I'm all in on Andrews here.
All right, let's build a lineup in the single lineup sim. I'm going to pull it up right now with Mark Andrews at the captain spot. Want to do that?
Let's do it.
All right, so let's go into the single lineup sims. And let's see, we'll set this for, make sure I have the right slate selected. There's so many showdown games. Here we go. Buffalo and Baltimore. We'll do it for a large contest and you'll set it to 20% at first. It's always different. I don't know if you know, like sometimes the single game slates on DraftKings, they pay out like 30 or 40% of the prize pool the first, and other ones they do the ones where it's like today's a little bit less top heavy. So I'll set it at the 20% to first. And all right, let's go in the captain spot, Mark Andrews. Okay, Andrews in the captain. Both quarterbacks, I assume?
Yeah, both quarterbacks.
All right, so let's go Allen and Lamar Jackson. This is going to give us $6,500 in salary remaining for the last 3 spots. So we still are going to have room to spend up for one other guy. So who do you want it to be? We've got Derrick Henry, James Cook, Zay Flowers, Khalil Shakur, Dalton Kincaid. We're going to need at least one more of these guys in the lineup just because we have the salary to play with.
I'm really buying your point that, like, Baltimore just did not throw last week. They got ahead early. You know, Dallas came back late. They, like, didn't have the ball, it seemed like, in the fourth quarter. So I'm going to say Zay Flowers. And I think that might be a little bit different. People might not want to use Andrews at the captain and Zay and utility. And, yeah, like, it's not, like, probably the most optimal on paper, but also want to get a little bit different. I don't want to captain Andrews and have dupes. I know he's not going to be that highly owned, but still, like, I don't want to be the same lineup that everyone else who does captain Andrews has.
All right, so we plugged Zay Flowers in. So now we've got Lamar Jackson with 2 of his pass catchers, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews in the captain spot. And now we've got 2 options left in the flex, and we've got 54.50 for remaining salary. So actually probably could go and spend up for Derrick Henry or Cook or something else. But what do you want to do with the next spot here? Presumably you don't want another pass catcher from the Ravens, correct? You're unmuted.
Oh, my bad. I was on mute. I think Andrews is cheap enough where Flowers can get there, but not cheap enough where I want 2 pass catchers. So I think it's the best Buffalo guy. Who's your favorite Buffalo pass catcher?
Yeah, for me, it's Dalton Kincaid overall. Kincaid was somebody. I mean, a lot of people thought coming into the year that Kincaid had potential to be the number 1 overall tight end in fantasy. And it's hard to say that still isn't the case because all of the tight ends have kind of been miserable on the whole. Kincaid did have a big game, could potentially end up being his breakout game. We only even projected for 26.5% ownership in the flex spot. And now also, we've got a lineup here that has a lot of pass catchers. We could build a lineup here that's kind of looking for a shootout where both teams are scoring a lot, throwing the football. So if we go Dalton Kincaid here, then what do we have? $3,700 for the last spot. And then at $3,700, we could go the Ravens. We could go Curtis Samuel. We could go Nelson Aguilar. I actually, considering that we're kind of playing for somewhat of a shootout, I think it's kind of fun to plug Curtis Samuel. And then we've got all quarterbacks and pass catchers and see what that looks like. How do you think of that? How do you think?
I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Let's do it. And they'll build a lineup for FanDuel after this as well. I saw we got the question from Malcolm Revamp, and there was also one more super chat to hit on. But yeah, let's see if this lineup ends up looking good. It might not because I think Lamar Jackson. Oh, okay. Still 38.7% sim ROI. I thought there was a chance it would come out negative just because it didn't have Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson in the MVP or in the captain spot, but it still worked out fine. Got a lineup here that looks pretty good. So we'll build a FanDuel one next. But a question from the super chats. We've got here from Goody, $20 3 max on DK, only a 588 person pool. Who are we playing at captain? If you're playing anything small field with like 500 entries, it's Lamar Jackson. So you don't have to get all that crazy.
I agree.
All right, Lamar Jackson it is. So now let's go and build out a FanDuel lineup. And then while we are, Matt, what do you make of the running backs in this game? Because I don't hate them, but I really like playing the quarterbacks a lot. And since they do have some negative like Derrick Henry has no receiving upside. James Cook has a little bit of receiving upside, but my preference over playing the quarterbacks is to pair them with some of the pass catchers. So as a result, I like the cheaper wide receivers a lot more than paying up for Henry or James Cook personally, Matt.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Henry's just so expensive, like with the quarterbacks that we have on this slate. You're probably going to need him to score you're going to need him to score twice. Like, considering he doesn't have receiving upside, you're going to need him to score twice, which I know he had a great week last week, but I'm also on the quarterbacks and the pass catchers.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with my lineups. I mean, you guys saw my exposures on the screen there a second ago from the lineups I've built. So, quarterbacks.
Here's a question for you, though.
Yeah,
who do you prefer? Like, if you're making one lineup and whatever, you were dead set on using one of the running backs, who do you prefer, Henry or Cook?
Let me go back and see what my exposures were in the lineups. So I'll say this on FanDuel, it's definitely Henry, where you don't have where the PPR bonus has less significance. I'm just gonna see like what was. Yeah, it's gonna be Derrick Henry for me on both sites. Henry, I have in 33% of lineups on DK compared to 23% for James Cook. So Henry for me, but I really don't love playing him in the same lineup with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So with that being said, Henry with the caveat being that if the lineup has Lamar Jackson, which is probably going to be most of the lineups, then the answer would be James Cook. But let's go back to building out a FanDuel lineup. And I'll ask you here, Matt, do we want to go and build a lineup here on FanDuel that has Allen or maybe we could do both? How about we'll do this first? We'll build a lineup that has Lamar Jackson, the MVP. Then we'll try to see if we could build one that rates out positively that doesn't have him in. Gut feeling, we're not going to be able to, but we'll do our best. We'll do our best. Let's build a Lamar Jackson lineup first. Do you want to go both quarterbacks in it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we got Lamar Jackson. We got Josh Allen right off the bat here. That gives us $8,800 in average salary remaining for the final 3 spots. So usually I'll be building a lot of showdown lineups kind of from the top down. And that's what we did here. We've got Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I kind of think we need to go and find the cheap guy we want to play next, because you don't want to build a lineup and then find out like, oh, I only have $4,000 in salary left at the end. And then there's nothing that you could do to fill that in. So let's go cheap here. And let's see if we're going cheap on FanDuel. I'll sort by the value column. Who are some of the cheaper guys that pop up? We got both the kickers are $9K, but we have to go a little bit cheaper than that because we got $8,800 in salary left. I don't love Justice Hill on FanDuel at $8K, where we're losing out on the PPR bonus. So I'll ask you, who do you like better, Matt? Mac Hollins or Curtis Samuel or Rashad Bateman?
I'm going to say Mac Hollins. I'm going to go back to your call out at the beginning of the show.
Okay, so let's plug in Mac Hollins. That is going to give us $9,750 for the remaining salary that we have left. Now at $9,750, Tucker's $9K, Bass is $9K. So we can fit in one of these guys that's a little bit more expensive. Could we get Zay Flowers in? That's going to be a little bit tight. So we probably have to go cheaper than Zay Flowers. I guess that kind of ends up being Kincaid by default. Yeah, so I guess this lineup just kind of builds itself. It's going to be Kincaid, and then it's going to be Tucker and Bass is tough too, though, because then we're using all of the salary. Whatever, let's do it and see how it ends up looking. Would you rather go Tucker or Bass, by the way? Do you have a preference? I
prefer Tucker, but it's so hard to tell on a single showdown. How about you?
Tucker, just because we've already got 3 Bills in the lineup, so let's do it this way. Then also, Chris Williams left us a super chat, and he says, "Great show like always, fellas. A tone, bring yourself some good karma. Hit the like button." And then he also says he wants to see a bunch of these stochastic avatars up top. I agree with you, Chris. I also want to see a bunch of stochastic avatars up top. And you know what the easiest way for you guys to do it is? Just download the stochastic avatar. Set it as your avatar on DraftKings or FanDuel. And then if you happen to finish at the top of a GPP with the avatar, tweet at us, email support stochastic at the stochastic HOF Hall of Fame account over on Twitter. Hit us up on there and get yourself some free stuff. We've got our Hall of Fame rings that Lofty's created this year. So if you guys have a big win for 20,000 plus this year, you get a custom-made ring for us that we'll send to you in the mail. And then in addition to that, you get free memberships and things like that. So there is no downside at all. No downside for you guys, only upside. You win with our avatar, you get free subscriptions, you get some free stuff. So why not? You got nothing to lose. Play with the stochastic avatar. This lineup ended up simming pretty well, Matt. 62% sim ROI. So I'm cool with this. Didn't leave any salary on the table, so maybe not my favorite overall, but looks like it's an acceptable lineup. Let's try to make one now that doesn't have either of the quarterbacks in the MVP spot. And we'll see if that's something that ends up rating out decently. So in the MVP, we talked about it earlier, going to Zay Flowers. So we have Zay Flowers in the MVP spot. Let's go Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, 7,250. All right, let's go Curtis Samuel, and then it's 7,500. What do you want to do? Do you want to go Ray Davis? Do you want to go Rashad Bateman?
Let's do Davis, just because, again, the non-full PPR helps running backs.
Okay. Oh, whoops. You said Ray Davis. I clicked on Bateman. All right. Let's see. Are we able to make a lineup here that doesn't have either? This could be bad. Neither of the quarterbacks in the MVP spot. This is why I don't like FanDuel for some of these slates. Yeah. Negative 64.7% sim ROI. And the lineup ended up winning 0 times in all the simulations we ran here. So it won the GPP 0 times. Let's see if instead of Ray Davis, we go Rashad Bateman. Let's see if that makes any kind of real difference. Let's see if that ends up coming decent. I feel like this also might be no. Jack Koff in the chat asking, is that good? No, neither of these are good. They both came out as being very negative. We did our best. It does look like on the Sims it won the GPP once, at least on this lineup. But it just goes to show how difficult it is to build lineups that are expected to be positive EV if they don't have either of the quarterbacks in that MVP spot. So it's hard. It's hard to do without either the quarterbacks. I think more likely than not, overwhelmingly more likely than not, that is going to be what ends up as the winning lineup is one of the quarterbacks there. See if there was any questions in Discord. And nope, we're all caught up with that. So we'll get back to just a few minutes left to go here. If you guys haven't done it yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Are there any, and yeah, DFS Ed in the chat saying, FanDuel, they're all going to tie for first. Yeah, that probably is what's going to happen on this slate with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. So earlier when I was doing the main slate show and I was building lineups in this, I was saying that for the main slate, I really prefer FanDuel. I don't know if you've been playing on FanDuel much this year, Matt, but they've been doing GPPs with guaranteed overlay that I think a lot of people should be taking advantage of. But for this particular slate, I really do prefer DraftKings. Are there any players we haven't talked about that are going to be either flyers for you in lineups or something you want to bring to people's attention, maybe to build a lineup and throw somebody in last minute?
Not really. The one cheap guy we mentioned in passing that I think is my favorite under 2K is Dawson Knox. If you need it, the Sims like him. Don't hate it. You know, he could find the end zone, and that is probably all you need, depending on how the slate plays out. So, yeah, I think we covered basically all of it. I got not much else to add.
Yeah, I'm just going to I'm going to urge you guys to keep playing kickers in Showdown. Lofty and I talked about this on Thursday Night Football. We see this now, and I know I said the same thing the other day, but I'm going to say it again anyway. Every single slate, not every single one, the majority of slates, you see kickers go off and have big games, and people are up in arms in Twitter. And they go, oh my God, how could a kicker be optimal again on Showdown? And nobody ever plays the kickers. Every single slate, you guys see right here. Tyler Bass, have him in 37% of my top lineups, project for 19% ownership. Justin Tucker, not quite as overweight, but still overweight to Justin Tucker as well. It's every single slate. I run lineups through the Sims, and they say kickers are under-owned, kickers are under-owned, kickers are under-owned. Then the slate plays out, kickers are optimal. Everybody goes, oh my God, how could the kickers have ended up being optimal? Play the kickers. Play the kickers in Showdown. We saw it again the other day, Thursday Night Football. Greg Joseph for the Giants made a bazillion field goals. The Giants didn't go for any fourth downs. They kicked a field goal every single time they have the opportunity to. Play Justin Tucker. Play Tyler Bass. They're two really good plays in the mid-range there. Devin Neiman says, DK last man in, $5,800, Andrews or Bass. He's got Lamar at captain. Yeah, particularly for this lineup. And by the way, like I said, I think Tyler Bass and Mark Andrews are both really good options. But if you have Lamar Jackson in the captain spot, there's more correlation with having Mark Andrews. So I do prefer Mark Andrews to Tyler Bass in those particular lineups. If you look at my exposures here, I have a little bit more exposure to Tyler Bass than Andrews. But with Lamar Jackson in the captain spot, if you're choosing in between the two, and also Andrews is $1,000 more expensive, Andrews over Bass in this particular scenario. How about for you, Matt? Are you there?
Yeah, sorry. What you said didn't come through. Repeat that.
Oh, okay. So we got a super chat from Devin Neiman. He's got a last man at $5,800. He wants to know, should he be playing Tyler Bass or Mark Andrews? He's got Lamar Jackson as the captain, $5,800 left. Andrews or Bass? Which direction do you go?
So I'm with you. In that lineup, I like Andrews more. The only thing I'll say is that, you know, if you're using all your salary and the rest of your lineup is full of popular pieces, you know, maybe you save $1,000 and use Bass. But personally, I'm with you. I prefer Andrews.
All right. And there we have it, guys. We are approaching lock now. So if you have not done yet, do us a big favor. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you want to check out Bet365, sign up using the link we have down below in the YouTube description box. They've got a great, really, I thought we were done with the bots. I thought I booted them all out. And then just one to close out the show pops up in the chat anyway. If you want to sign up with Bet365, link down below in the YouTube description box. Great deal over at Bet365. You place a $10 bet. You make a $10 deposit. You place a $5 bet on anything. Doesn't matter if it wins. Doesn't matter if it loses. It doesn't matter what it is you place a bet on. Just $5 on anything, and they're going to give you $200 in bonus bets there. So take advantage of the offer at Bet365. If you're anybody who has a gambling problem, call or text the number 1-800-GAMBLER. And that is going to do it for us today, guys. If you haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enjoy Sunday Night Football, and have a great rest of your weekend. See you guys back here tomorrow. Peace out.